What's going on, everyone? It's Gamacher Gaming back at it again. It is Sunday, September 11th, if I'm not mistaken, right? It's that big infamous day that 21 years ago we had the attack on the World Trade Center in New York. And, ever since then, little by little, there's been an agenda going forth to take our rights away. To all the countless people that had to go and get shipped off into a war in the Middle East, and there's a whole thing that we could say about that, right? But I wanted to do a stream today, just doing a little read through on Ecclesiastes, which is actually actually one of my favorite books in the Bible. Um, and the reason why is because there's just like so much undeniable truth, right, to it. As far as I guess my like the one thing that I always found funny is that people like in today's age, right? They will almost like assume that I don't know, like the way that humans are today is like so advanced and like oh we're so much different now than we were, back in these ancient times with and it's like well actually no. And I think that that gives some credence to like the fact of like people that want to talk about evolution and the earth being billions and billions of years old and humans being millions of years old or whatever they want to think. It's like well actually we can read through Ecclesiastes, which I mean obviously was written thousands of years ago, and kind of see that people have always been the same. And there's a lot of good lessons that you can get from Ecclesiastes. A lot of people will say it's like a almost a more, I guess, like what's the word that I'm looking for? Like a pessimistic kind of view of things on in the Bible, but I don't I don't think so personally. I don't agree with that. Um, and again, for who wrote Ecclesiastes, we can see here that it was written by uh, they believe it is King Solomon, right? So they believe that because of him declaring he was son of David, king in Jerusalem, uh, that it was, you know, Solomon that wrote Ecclesiastes, and there's a lot of wisdom of Solomon, right, in Proverbs, um, but yeah. So if we look at kind of what Ecclesiastes is saying, I think that we can actually we can garner a lot of information on like how it's not really this pessimistic like oh everything is terrible kind of book of the Bible, but it can actually give us the insight that we might need to know like hey the things that are going on today in today's age, right, with everything from the Jesuit order controlling the all of the facets of society to big tech, big pharma. I mean, honestly, I think it's more pessimistic today to think of like how we're under so much oppression. And the oppression is way more in our face now because we've got access to TV and internet 24/7, no matter what. Whereas back in when Ecclesiastes was written, there was oppression, but at least it wasn't like you'd wake up and roll over and pick up your cell phone and look at the shitty news that's being constantly forced into our faces, right? Um, so I think that there's a lot of wisdom that we can gain from actually reading through Ecclesiastes, seeing what it's saying. It's not a very long book of the Bible, but being able to use that knowledge to overcome what we're facing in today's age, with everything from the Forest VACCINES, to finding like an inner peace with which is not putting up with any of the BS that's going on. Again, the main reason why I like to talk about this kind of stuff, guys, is because using gematria, we know what's going on in the world. We know that there is a higher order of people that are pushing agendas and calling all the shots, right? But the truth is given to us in the Bible of that these people don't really hold dominion over us, whether they want to think so or not. Okay, they can try and force whatever they want. They can try and make as many laws as they want. They can try to have as many rulers, ruling over people that they want. But there's only one king, one ruler, and it's liberating. Truthfully, for me, once I kind of figured out where I really was in my relationship with God, and I started to learn how to develop it more, it's just been so liberating. It's been so just like a breath of fresh air, I guess one could say, because all the things that happen down here, right? Like in terms of the rat race they have us trying to run every day. It's you learn hey, actually it has no meaning to it really. It's got no dominion over me, and it's liberating. I feel way more better, and I can act on my own accord, do things according to my own beliefs, and the big thing too is acting locally. Um, it doesn't have to be about throwing a revolution and trying to get millions of people to rise up. For me at least personally, would it be great if that happened? Sure. Whatever. There's a lot of boogaloo stuff that people talk about out there. I'm like, whatever, man. We all like to think that'd be fun, but when it really came down to it, it probably would not be that good of a time for a lot of people if the constraints of the bounds that were put in place for societal laws, at least in this country, went into the shitter. But anyway, so yeah, I'm just gonna do a read through of Ecclesiastes, maybe offer some insights on maybe what we can use to apply it to today in today's terms, and really just see how nothing is new under the sun, right? So start off. So it says the words of the teacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. So right there is where they say that's how this could be accredited to Solomon. And again, there's a lot of wisdom that Solomon gave, right? It was Solomon's temple. And people would argue that those were the original Freemasons, but not quite so much. They were very important builders of the time, but Freemasonry didn't come around till way later. So it says, futility of futiles, says the teacher. Futility of futiles. Everything is futile. What does a man gain from all his labor, at which he toils under the sun? Generations come and generations go, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun sets. It hurries back to where it arose. And I just want to touch on something real quick too with this. So this word that they use here for forever, right? Quite literally is pretty much used to mean everlasting, something that never stops, right? And truthfully, right? It's antiquity, futurity. So that might be kind of for people that believe that Revelation, the end of the world, and it's all gonna end, and so it does say right here that the earth remains forever. So that could be kind of a way to think of the end times. It's not really quite what you think it is, because it straight up is saying here the earth is going to be here forever, and we're all gonna be on it for forever, probably. I don't think there's any escaping this with rockets to Mars or whatever the hell they talk about, because it's not possible to get there, right? And even if you got there, guess what? It's just a giant star. So, but anyway, so it says the sun rises and the sun sets. It hurries back to where it arose, blowing southward, then turning northward. Round and round the wind swirls, ever returning on its course, which that's given to us in the book of Enoch as well. So you could argue that he is that he's quoting the book of Enoch from this. Talking about southward and northward winds. Book of Enoch speaks of portals that are on earth, that are on the earth. That's where the sun comes from, the moon when they rise and set. And again, I don't think we can prove that that's not the case, right? If you were to try and follow the moon, right? Let's say you had the capability to have a super fast jet or whatever, and you wanted to follow the moon. Well, once you got to Antarctica, they would shoot your plane down. So there's that. But anyway, yep. And then it says ever returning on its course. All the rivers flow into the sea, yet the sea is never full. To the place from which the streams come, there again they flow. So it's talking about just like the cycles, right? Like it's continually happening, and we also get that from. Oh man, I forget. We talked about a couple streams ago where it straight up even says that the water from the rivers in the ocean comes down in rainfall, so it's all recycling, right? This is not a brand new concept to people, and they even Solomon was aware that like yeah, the sea's never full because the from where the streams come, there again they go back to. So it's one giant perfect system that we're in on Earth. And it says, all things are wearisome, more than one can describe. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear content with hearing. What has been is what will be, and what has been done will be done again. There's nothing new under the sun. Right? So that's a really good verse, I think, in the Bible to kind of explain, even back when Ecclesiastes was written, that's just what the truth of the matter was, that they knew that there was just the perpetuality of nature and of mankind. So, I mean, for us living, how many thousands of years into the future of that, I think that you can actually, we can even see, because they have a pretty cool timeline, right, of everything. And you can see that according to the timeline, Ecclesiastes was written in general in 937 BC. So we could think of that as about 3,000 years ago, right? So about 3,000 years ago is when even back then they knew, hey, like whatever has happened before is always what's going to happen, and everything that's been done is done again because there's nothing new that's going to happen. And I think that can really lead back to where we're at today with, the Jesuit order, the people that are trying to exert dominion over mankind, right? That it's always going to be a power struggle. There's the powers of bad people that are going to always be in power, and they're always going to find a way to try and overcome, everybody. But with this knowledge and knowing what we know with what the Bible provides us, we know that it's actually not a battle they can win, I guess you could say, because there's nothing new under the sun. Is there a case where one can say, look, this is new? It has already existed in the ages before us. I mean, Man, think about that. 3,000 years ago. Yes, if you were to ask like most people right now, hey, what do you think 3,000 years ago people thought? They'd probably be like, oh, I don't know. They probably weren't that smart. They probably weren't that or whatever. You know, not that advanced. They were living in uh, whatever squalor and this and that. It's like, oh well, not really. Um, Especially when you take into account the Earth is probably no more than about 7,000 years old. So this is 3,000 years ago, right? So a little bit under halfway of the age of the Earth, and everything was already known. So uh, I don't think there is a case where any of us could say that is this new. I can't think of one. Every day, it's the same thing that we've seen. It's perpetual cycles over the course of generations. Um, so it says, there is no remembrance of those who came before, as those to come will not be remembered by those who follow after. I, the teacher, was king over Israel, right? Yisrael and Jerusalem. And I set my mind to seek and explore by wisdom all that is done under heaven. What a heavy burden God has laid on the sons of men to keep them occupied. I have seen all the things that are done under the sun. I have found them all to be futile, a pursuit of the wind. Right? So it's like chasing after the wind. I think that's probably where that euphemism comes from this passage. What is crooked cannot be straightened, and what is lacking cannot be counted. I said to myself, behold, I have grown and increased in wisdom beyond all those before me who were over Jerusalem, and my mind has observed a wealth of wisdom and knowledge. So I set my mind to know wisdom and madness and folly. I learned that this too is a pursuit of the wind. For with much wisdom comes much sorrow, and as knowledge grows, grief increases. Right? So, I mean, that could be definitely a true statement for a lot of people, right? The more you know about what really goes on in the world, the more sad it appears to be. There's all these terrible things that happen every day. I mean, right now, right, as I'm talking and as you guys are listening, there's a whole entire world where there's things going on out there in people's lives right now, second by second. People being born, people dying, people falling in love, people breaking up. I mean, it really is a non-stopping uh, machinization of just perpetual events, right? There's nothing that we can do to stop what's going on out there in the world, and um, I think that it is true to say that the more that you know about stuff, the more upsetting it can be about how the world works and what people do, the evil of man, right? I said to myself, come now, I will test you with pleasure, enjoy what is good, but it proved to be futile. I said of laughter, it is folly, and of pleasure, what does it accomplish? My mind, all the while guiding me with wisdom, sought to cheer my body with wine and embrace folly, all right, so foolishness, until I could see what was worthwhile for men to do under heaven during the few days of their lives. Because in the grand scheme, we don't live for very long. I enlarged my works, right? And we can even, kind of take a look at what the original Hebrew is saying. So he made great works of everything. Now, I built myself houses and planted myself vineyards. I made myself gardens and parks and planted in them all kinds of fruit trees. I built reservoirs to water my groves of flourishing trees. I acquired men servants and maid servants, and servants were born in my house. I also owned more herds and flocks than anyone in Jerusalem before me. And I accumulated for myself silver and gold, and the treasure of kings and provinces. I gathered to myself male and female singers, and the delights of the sons of men, many concubines, right? So you had a whole harem going on. So I became I became great and surpassed all in Jerusalem who had preceded me, and my wisdom remained with me. Anything my eyes desired, I did not deny myself. I refused my heart no pleasure, for my heart took delight in all my work, and this was the reward for all my labor. So, again, right, it's kind of justifying himself. Well, you know what? I work hard, so I'm going to do everything that I want to do, right, because I deserve it. Yet when I considered all the works that my hands had accomplished and what I had toiled to achieve, I found everything to be futile, right? And this word, right, that they use for futile, right, hebel, means more like a vapor or a breath. So really, when they're saying like futile, what it's trying to say is it's just like a like almost like a nothingness, right? A vapor. It's not something that you can really see. It's very brief, and so it was a pursuit of the wind. There was nothing to be gained under the sun. Then I turned to consider wisdom and madness and folly, for what more can the king's successor do than what has already been accomplished? And I saw that wisdom exceeds folly, just as light exceeds darkness. The wise man has eyes in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. Yet I also came to realize that one fate overcomes them both. And even though this was, about 980 years before, the Mashiach came, uh, even in that time span of the 1,000 years before, 1,000 years after Ecclesiastes was written, we see that people were still blind, right? They had eyes, but they still couldn't see. And that's something that is referenced over to uh, plenty of times, right? Like in Mark 8:18, Yahusha says, "Having eyes, do you not see? And having ears, do you not hear? And do you not remember? When I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000, and how many basketfuls of broken pieces did you collect?" All right, so he's talking about when they fed the 5,000. But same thing, right? So he's saying, the fool still does not have eyes that he uses to see. Yeah, I also came to realize that one fate overcomes them both. So one chance, one fortune, one fate. So I said to myself, the fate of the fool will also befall me. What then have I gained by being wise? And I said to myself that this too is futile. Right? For there is no lasting remembrance of the wise, just as with the fool, seeing that both will be forgotten in the days to come. Alas, the wise man will die just like the fool. So I hated life, because the work that is done under the sun was grievous to me. For everything is futile and a pursuit of the wind. So you know how we could people could read this and be like, oh wow, man, this is really, this is like really depressing. He's talking like, not, everyone dies, doesn't matter if you're a fool or a wise man. But I believe that there is a beautiful simplicity in that. And by that, what I mean is, we'll get to it. You'll see how this all kind of culminates, right? I hated all for which I had toiled under the sun, because I must leave it to the man who comes after me. And who knows whether he will be a wise man or a fool? Yet he will take over all the labor at which I have worked skillfully under the sun. This too is futile. And this could also be hearkening back to, if you've ever read through First Chronicles and Second Chronicles, where it's very common that you will see that there will be a ruler that comes to Jerusalem and does great things, right, for the city, for the people, for the land, and they end up dying, and their child comes in, their kid comes in, and they're not good. They will do terrible things, and put up false idols. They call them I think they call them like poles, some kind of like totems that were put up, and we can actually, just to kind of give you a little insight on how that really does come about. Um, So daughter of Zadok. So even this, right? Like a daughter of Zadok. So this guy right here, right? Uh, Yotam. He was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned 16 years. His mother was a daughter of the sons of Zadok. And he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, just as his father Uzziah had done, right? And there, then like you could see that okay, he did all this thing, right? He rebuilt the upper gate of the house of the Lord, and he worked extensively on the wall of Ophel. He also built cities in the hill country of Judea, and doing all these good things, waged war against the king of the Ammonites and defeated them. Um, so he grew super powerful. So it talks about like, yeah, okay, this is really good, and then it will talk about well when he was done, right? So he rested with his fathers, and his son Ahaz became king in his place. And when he became king, he reigned in Jerusalem. And unlike David, his forefather, he did not do what was right in the eyes of the Lord. Instead, he walked in the way of the kings of Israel and even made cast images of the Baals, right? So that's kind of what Ecclesiastes is saying. Is like Solomon saying, hey, like all the great things that I could possibly do, right? Once I'm done and dead and gone, you know, who's to say that my successor, even if it was your own child, who has said they're not going to come in and do what was not right, right? So my heart began to despair over all the labor that I had done under the sun. When there is a man who has labored with wisdom, knowledge, and skill, he must give his portion to a man who has not worked for it. This too is futile and a great evil. So he's talking about the succession of powers, right? Again, guys, this is, nothing new, For what does a man get for all the labor and endeavors at which he toils under the sun? Indeed, all his days are filled with grief, and his task is sorrowful. Even at night, his mind does not rest. This too is futile. Nothing is better for a man than to eat and drink and enjoy his work. I have also seen that this is from the hand of God. So to take pride in what you're doing with your work and eating and drinking and being in the presence of the Lord, right, is really a great gift from the hand of God. For apart from Him, who can eat and who can find enjoyment? To the man who is pleasing in His sight, He gives wisdom and knowledge and joy, but to the sinner He assigns the task of gathering and accumulating that which He will hand over to one who pleases God. This too is futile and a pursuit of the wind. To everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search and a time to count as lost, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. What does the worker gain from his toil? I have seen the burden that God has laid on men to occupy them. He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the hearts of men, yet they cannot fathom the work God has done from beginning to end. Right? So let's talk about this. So He has made everything beautiful in its time, and He has put eternity in their hearts. Right? So what is He trying to say there? So he's put eternity in the hearts of men, yet they cannot fathom the work that God has done from the beginning to the end. Well, we were made in His image, right? He said, "Let us make man in our image." He's speaking of him and Yahusha. So as we were made in their image, everything about us is made with the principalities of God in mind, right? So eternity was set in us from the beginning, right? Again, that same word, where just like how he says, the earth will always be here. Well, this could be like referencing salvation, right? The salvation of man. So what he's saying is that eternity was set into us, but they cannot fathom the work that God has done from the beginning to end. Right? And it's interesting because this quite literally means like this word quite literally means like the end. But it's not talking about the end of the world, right? He's talking about just from the beginning of the days of creation to the end of the days of creation. Everything was done within that timeline. So there's nothing else that needs to be made. Nothing else that needs to be done. I know that there is nothing better for men than to rejoice and do good while they live, and also that every man should eat and drink and find satisfaction in all his labor. This is the gift of God. I know that everything God does will remain forever. Nothing can be added to it or taken from it. God works that men should revere him. What exists has already been, and what will be has already been, for God will call to account what has passed. Furthermore, I saw under the sun that in the place of judgment there is wickedness, and in the place of righteousness there is wickedness. I said in my heart, God will judge the righteous and the wicked, since there is a time for every activity and every deed. I said to myself, as for the sons of men, God tests them so that they may see for themselves that they are but beasts. Right? This word, behema, like literally referring to how like we're but beasts of the earth. Right? Even though man is given dominion over all the beasts of the earth, in the eyes of Yahuwah, right? That's why God tests us. That's why sin is perpetual, right? Which is why we needed the ending of the age of the old covenant and the beginning of the age of the new covenant. For the fates of both men and beasts are the same. As one dies, so dies the other. They all have the same breath. Man has no advantage over the animals, since everything is futile. All go to the one place, all come from dust, and all return to dust. That's powerful, you know, and it's true as well, you know, and it really makes you kind of appreciate even more, like, having hunted and everything, pretty avid about hunting and just in general, it's true. Like you have to appreciate what life is, not just for us and ourselves, but for what allows us to sustain ourselves. You know, the food and water is the bare necessities, right? Food, water, shelter, and all of it's given to us. Um, but when we die, that's where we go. We go right back into the dust. Who knows if the spirit of man rises upward and the spirit of the animal descends into the earth? I have seen that there is nothing better for a man than to enjoy his work, because that is his lot. For who can bring him to see what will come after him? Again, I observed all the oppression taking place under the sun. I saw the tears of the oppressed, and they had no comforter. The power lay in the hands of their oppressors, and there was no comforter. So, I mean, let's again talk about how that is directly correlating to what we're seeing today, right? These are all things that we're going through right now today as we speak, as this live stream is going on. There's no difference, right? So I admired the dead who had already died above the living who are still alive. But better than both is he who has not yet existed, who has not seen the evil that is done under the sun. I saw that all labor and success spring from a man's envy of his neighbor. This too is futile and a pursuit of the wind. The fool folds his hands and consumes his own flesh. Right, so saying like they would kind of clasp their own hands together and eat themselves. And what kind of connotation this could have? Like, what is he really trying to say here? Better one handful with tranquility than two handfuls with toil and pursuit of the wind. Again, I saw futility under the sun. There is a man all alone without even a son or brother, and though there is no end to his labor, his eyes are still not content with his wealth. For whom do I toil and bereave my soul of enjoyment? This too is futile, a miserable task. Two are better than one because they have a good return for their labor. For if one falls down, his companion can lift him up, but pity the one who falls without another to help him up. Again, if two lie down together, they will keep warm, but how can one keep warm alone? And though one may be overpowered, two can resist. Moreover, a cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. Better is a poor but wise youth than an old but foolish king who no longer knows how to take a warning. For the youth came from prison to be king, even though he was born poor in his kingdom. I saw that all who lived and walked under the sun followed this second child who succeeded the king. There is no limit to all the people who were before them, yet those who come later will not rejoice in the successor. This too is futile and a pursuit of the wind. Guard your steps when you go to the house of God. Draw near to listen rather than to offer the sacrifice of fools who do not know that they do wrong. Do not be hasty to speak, and do not let your heart be hasty to utter a word before God. After all, Yahuwah is in heaven, and you are on earth. Now, the great thing about this, too, is this is not really specific to a contemporary audience, right? I mean, this is something like this is an example of when we're reading it and we're seeing that literally this is speaking to everybody who's reading the this passage right here. So you are on earth. So let your words be few. Now, I've kind of struggled with what this is trying to say here, because essentially he's saying like, well, what's happening to us down here doesn't matter all that much to God, right? But really, I mean, a different way to think about it is it's just he's saying like, don't be rash with your mouth, and don't be hate and don't and your heart, and don't hastily utter anything before God. So yes, God is in heaven, you are on earth. Thus, let your words be few. But what that's really trying to say is like, you know how if you've ever heard the phrase, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so you should listen twice as much as you speak. That's really what it's trying to say is like, hey, instead of being like, well, I'm so upset about this and that, and sometimes people will blame God for bad circumstances that they're in, or they will try to pray to God for something to change that might actually be in their life for a reason, right? For a very specific reason. God would put obstacles in our way in life. That's kind of what this is saying is like, listen more than what you're really going to say. So what says let your words be few, it's not really trying to say that God doesn't care. You know, Yahuwah obviously cares. He cares so much. But it's just that you've got to really think about what the situation is before you kind of just start blabbing off about like maybe the way it might make you feel or what your opinions are on the situation. It says, "As a dream comes through many cares, so the speech of a fool comes with many words." So, as a dream comes through many like occupations, right? And I think that this does say it could be an ordinary dream or a dream with prophetic meaning, um, and how it comes through many occupations, like through many tasks. So the speech of a fool comes with many words. So that's pretty poignant, I think. You know, it's talking about how um, you know, like doing a lot, like more action, uh, kind of gives you a that's what a dream comes through, and whether it's like saying achieving a dream, right, or if it's talking about like a fulfillment, because again, this is could be talking about like a dream with prophetic meaning. So as that comes through many actions, so the speech of a fool comes with many words. So again, talking about uh, listening and acting twice as much as you talk. When you make a vow to God, do not delay in fulfilling it because he takes no pleasure in fools. Fulfill your vow. It is better not to vow than make a vow and not fulfill it. Do not let your mouth cause your body to sin, and do not tell the messenger that your vow was a mistake. Why should Yahuwah be angry with your words and destroy the work of your hands? For as many dreams bring futility, so do many words. Therefore, fear Yahuwah. Wow. All right, it's pretty strong. And I think that again, this could be talking about like how uh, many achievements, many completions, or maybe even if it's talking about like chasing after a dream and it doesn't always work out how you thought it would. But it says so do many words as well, right? So therefore, fear Yahuwah, right? Revere Him. Know that you know He is in heaven. We're on earth. It's like it said. If you see the oppression of the poor and the denial of justice and righteousness in the province, do not be astonished at the matter, for one official is watched by a superior, and higher still are over them. The produce of the earth is taken by all, the king himself profits from the fields. He who loves money is never satisfied by money. He who loves wealth is never satisfied by income. This too is futile. When good things increase, so do those who consume them. What then is the profit of the owner except to behold them with his eyes? The sleep of the worker is sweet, whether he eats little or much, but the abundance of the rich man permits him no sleep. There is a grievous evil I have seen under the sun, wealth hoarded to the harm of its owner, or wealth lost in a bad venture, so that when he has a son there is nothing to pass on. As a man came from his mother's womb, so he will depart again. Naked as he arrived, he takes nothing for his labor to carry in his hands. This too is a grievous evil, exactly as a man is born, so he will depart. What does he gain as he toils for the wind? Moreover, all his days he eats in darkness, with much sorrow, sickness, and anger. Here is what I have seen to be good and fitting, to eat and drink, and to find satisfaction in all the labor one does under the sun during the few days of life that Yahuwah has given him, for this is his lot. Furthermore, Yahuwah has given riches and wealth to every man, and he has enabled him to enjoy them, to accept his lot, and to rejoice in his labor. This is a gift from Yahuwah. For a man seldom considers the days of his life, because God keeps him occupied with the joy of his heart. There is another evil I have seen under the sun, and it weighs heavily upon mankind. Yahuwah gives a man riches, wealth, and honor, so that he lacks nothing in his that his heart desires. But Yahuwah does not allow him to enjoy them. Instead, a stranger will enjoy them. This is futile and a grievous evil. A man may father 100 children and live for many years, yet no matter how long he lives, if he is unsatisfied with his prosperity and does not even receive a proper burial, I say that a stillborn child is better off than he. For he enters in futility and departs in darkness, and his name is shrouded in obscurity. A stillborn child has more rest than he, though never seeing the sun or knowing anything. If he lives 1,000 years twice over, but fails to enjoy his prosperity, do not all go to the same place. Right? So when we die, we all end up in the same spot. All a man's labor is for his mouth, yet his appetite is never satisfied. What advantage then has the wise man over the fool? What gain comes to the poor man who knows how to conduct himself before others? Better what the eye can see than the wandering of desire. This too is futile and a pursuit of the wind. So, what is it trying to say here in these last couple passages, right? So, it's saying that, like, okay, we all end up in the same place. Um, and what kind of advantage does somebody who's super smart have over a foolish person? So, like, when a poor man knows how to conduct himself before people, like try to act proper, have the proper mannerisms and everything, what's the difference of it? So, better what the eye can see than the wandering of desire. So, I think it's saying, like, the things that we have right now, presently, currently, God gives us everything that we need, and we're always going to desire and want more. And I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to better yourself and better your situation and better your circumstance. And whenever you get to that next level, right, you're always going to want more. You're always going to want more. It's very hard for humanity to be content with what we have, right? Whether we make $250,000 a year, $5 million a year, or $30,000 a year, we're all going to be in that same mindset of wanting more, wanting better, wanting to achieve that next, that next dream, right? Perhaps, but it's hard for us to really like kind of take a step back and say, hey, look, I've got everything that I really need, so I don't need to be, rushing myself in. And I mean, truthfully, I think this is all about just being able to support yourself and take care of your family and taking care of people that might need it in the community. I think that that's really what this is trying to put a kind of like highlight on, right? So it says, better what the eye can see than the wandering of desire. Literally, like what we have in front of us is should be the contentness that we reach and we fulfill, but that's just not how mankind is, right? That's why it says this too is futile and a pursuit of the wind. Like it's not going to happen. Whatever exists was named long ago, and what happens to a man is foreknown, but he cannot contend with one stronger than he. For the more words, the more futility, and how does that profit anyone? For who knows what is good for a man during the few days he passes through his fleeting life like a shadow? Who can tell a man what will come after him under the sun? A good name is better than fine perfume, and one's day of death is better than his day of birth. Again, like we can read through, you read through this, you're like, man, this is like really just like depressing. He's talking about like it's better to be born dead than to have to, live through not being content with what you have and leaving behind everything to a successor that you don't even know if they're going to be doing the right thing. So it's very like you read through this, you're like, man, it's depressing. But it does all get tied together. It is better to enter a house of mourning than a house of feasting, since death is the end of every man, and the living should take this to heart. Sorrow is better than laughter, for a sad countenance is good for the heart. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of pleasure. And I mean, realistically, like, think about it. It's talking like this is all relevant to what we're seeing today. How much strife and how much like it's really the people that have the least that are always the most grateful, right? Like even Yahusha, when he's in the temple, he kicks out all the people that were selling in the temple, and he's in there teaching in the last days before he got crucified. And there was the donation box, and he sees this widower go up and put 2 copper coins into the donation box, and he calls it out. He tells everybody this woman has put in more than anybody here, even though she has put in the least, right? This is an exact kind of like idea, the same idea of the people that have the least are often the ones that will that are giving up the most if they try to give, and they're the ones that are the most grateful for what they have. And I know it sounds like like a kind of like a trope or whatever, where it's like, yeah, okay, we all know that's been like done over a million times, but again, this was 3,000 years ago. You know what I mean? And it's still relevant today. That you've got what do you have? You have the people that are the ruling class above us that are all part of this Jesuit cabal. They're all pushing these agendas for the New World Order. How much richer did the top 2% get over the course of the pandemic, right? The plandemic. How much richer did they really get? And how much more is everybody else struggling? You know what I mean? So there's still relevance to it today. There's always going to be the next thing. There's always going to be the next event that they're going to that's going to cause people to have to spend more money and tighten. They're going to tighten down the control of everybody. When it gets to the point of you know making people buy electric cars, and making people are going to have to buy renewable energies, and people are going to have to rent, right? You're not going to be able to buy land or buy a home. Like, this is all real shit. This is a goal that they're working towards. BlackRock is going to be part of the Great Reset. There's nothing we can do to get away from that, short of like very drastic measures. But again, we can look at it and be like, okay, well, so what? My thought on it is I don't give a shit about Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates. Yeah, they can go ahead and poison the water supply and put all the weird shit in the food and everything like that. Okay, you're trying to make people get sick and have to get more uh, shots of bioengineered pharmaceutical bullshit. Fine, you know obviously, if we have the knowledge and the foresight, we know that we don't have to fall for their shit. But even if other people do, and that's how they're going to profit, right? If they're just looking to profit off of these crazy events that they're planning, and we know they're planned, we know that it's all bullshit. If we have the knowledge and the uh, you know personal relationship with God, then it really doesn't mean anything, right? Like, they can try and do all the crazy stuff that they want, and it's like, okay, well, you're doing all this on Earth, right? So there's more that comes after this, and where you go and where I go, gonna be two different places, right? It is better to heed a wise man's rebuke than to listen to the song of fools. For like the crackling of thorns under the pot, so is the laughter of the fool. This too is futile. Which, that's kind of interesting. It's the the noise of thorns under the pot. Huh. A pot. It could be like a temple pot, a horn, hook, briar, thorns. So it's almost like saying, because like it's like almost like the same word, right? Let's see what it says here in Hebrew. So it's the laughter of the fool. Maybe yeah. Okay, I get it. So it's talking about like it's just like a very like a scratchy kind of thing. The laughter of the fool, right? It's like saying like it's like really annoying probably. This too is futile. Surely extortion turns a wise man into a fool, and a bribe corrupts the heart. Which, yeah, I mean, obviously, right? The end of a matter is better than the beginning, and a patient spirit is better than a proud one. Do not be quickly provoked in your spirit, for anger settles in the lap of a fool. All right, or in the bosom of a fool. Do not say, "Why were the old days better than these?" For it is unwise of you to ask about this. Wisdom, like an inheritance, is good, and it benefits those who seek the Son. For wisdom, like money, is a shelter, and the advantage of knowledge is that wisdom preserves the life of its owner. Consider the work of Yahuwah, who can straighten what he has bent. In the day of prosperity, be joyful, but in the day of adversity, consider this. Yahuwah has made one of these along with the other, so that a man cannot discover anything that will come after him. In my futile life I have seen both of these, a righteous man perishing in his righteousness, and a wicked man living long in his wickedness. Do not be overly righteous, and do not make yourself too wise. Why should you destroy yourself? Do not be excessively wicked, and do not be a fool. Why should you die before your time? It is good to grasp that one and not let the other slip from your hand, for he who fears Yahuwah will follow both warnings. Wisdom makes the wise man stronger than 10 rulers in a city. Surely there is no righteous man on earth who does good and never sins. All right, which that is the reality of the situation, right? That's why Yahusha came for us to be the ultimate sacrifice for our sins. Do not pay attention to every word that is spoken, or you may hear your servant cursing you. For you know in your heart that many times you yourself have cursed others, right? So, I mean, guys, this is like, I mean, to think that 3,000 years ago, and this is still the same thing, the same earthly desires, the same, thought process that many people have. We've always had it. Man has just always been the same since the beginning. All this I tested by wisdom, saying, I resolved to be wise, but it was beyond me. What exists is out of reach and very deep. Who can fathom it? I directed my mind to understand, to explore, to search out wisdom and explanations, and to understand the stupidity of wickedness and the folly of madness. And I find more bitter than death the woman who is a snare, whose heart is a net, and whose hands are chains. The man who pleases Yahuwah will escape her, but the sinner will be ensnared. Wow, right? Eek, that's oh man, that's definitely got some relevance, I'm sure, for a lot of people out there, right? Behold, it says the teacher, or sorry, behold, says the teacher, I have discovered this by adding one to another to find an explanation. While my soul was still searching but not finding, among 1,000 I have found one upright man, but among all these I have not found a virtuous woman. Only this have I found. I have discovered that Yahuwah made men upright, but they have sought out many schemes. Who is like the wise man? Who knows the interpretation of a matter? A man's wisdom brightens his face, and the sternness of his face is changed. Keep the king's command, I say, because of your oath before Yahuwah. Do not hasten to leave his presence, and do not persist in a bad cause, for he will do whatever he wants. Talk about the king, right? For the king's word is supreme, and who can say to him, what are you doing? Whoever keeps his command will come to no harm, and a wise heart knows the right time and procedure. For there is a right time and procedure to every purpose, though a man's misery weighs heavily upon him. Since no one knows what will happen, who can tell him what is to come? As no man has power over the wind to contain it, so there is no authority over the day of death. And no one can be discharged in wartime, so wickedness will not release those who practice it. That's very, very interesting. So nobody can be sent away, right, in wartime. So wickedness will not release those who practice it. So that's kind of like saying it's like a self-fulfilling kind of prophecy. That's very interesting. So the wickedness, right? People that endure into wickedness and that do evil, wicked things, well, during wartime, they're gonna stay. They stay in power, right? So all this I have seen, applying my mind to every deed that is done under the sun. There is a time when one man lords it over another to his own detriment. Right? Yeah. All this he has seen, applying my mind to every deed that is done under the sun. There is a time when one man lords it over another to his own detriment. Then too I saw the burial of the wicked who had come and gone from the holy place and were praised in the city where they had done so. This too is futile. When the sentence for a crime is not speedily executed, the hearts of men become fully set on doing evil. Although a sinner does evil 100 times and still lives long, yet I also know that it will go well with those who fear Yahuwah, who are reverent in his presence. Yet because the wicked do not fear Yahuwah, it will not go well with them, and their days will not lengthen like a shadow. There is a futility that is done on earth. There are righteous men who get what the actions of the wicked deserve, and there are wicked men who get what the actions of the righteous deserve. I say that this too is futile, right? And again, we can all kind of agree with that as well. That there's, these people out there that are doing evil things and they get away with it. They're living a great life. But again, we all know what happens when we die as well. So it's only a matter of time because you cannot escape that day. So I commended the enjoyment of life because there is nothing better for man under the sun than to eat and drink and be merry. For this joy will accompany him in his labor during the days of his life that Yahuwah gives him under the sun. When I applied my mind to know wisdom and to observe the activity that one does on earth, though his eyes do not see sleep day or night, I saw every work of Yahuwah that a man is unable to comprehend, the work that is done under the sun. Despite his efforts to search it out, he cannot find its meaning. Even if the wise man claims to know, he is unable to comprehend. So I took all this to heart and concluded that the righteous and the wise, as well as their deeds, are in Yahuwah's hands. Man does not know what lies ahead, whether love or hate. Yes, right? Perfect example of God being sovereign, right? So God is sovereign. We are all here. We are living. There's events that go on around us, and it's the fact of the matter that God is sovereign that things happen. Right? Man does not know what lies ahead, whether love or hate. It is the same for all. There is a common fate for the righteous and the wicked, for the good and the bad, for the clean and the unclean, for the one who sacrifices and the one who does not. As it is for the good, so it is for the sinner. As it is for the one who makes a vow, so it is for the one who refuses to take a vow. This is in evil and everything that is done under the sun. There is one fate for everyone. Furthermore, the hearts of men are full of evil and madness while they are alive, and afterward they join the dead. There is hope, however, for anyone who is among the living, for even a live dog is better than a dead lion. For the living know that they will die, but the dead know nothing. They have no further reward, because the memory of them is forgotten. Their love, their hate, and their envy have already vanished, and they will never again have a portion in all that is done under the sun. Now, again, recognize that this is continually talking about earthly matters, right? It's talking about things that are pertaining to like while we're here on earth. And then yes, we all die, but it's really what happens after that, right? So let's go on. Go eat your bread with joy and drink your wine with a cheerful heart, for Yahuwah has already approved your works. Let your clothes always be white, and never spare the oil for your head. Enjoy life with your beloved wife, all the days of the fleeting life which has been given to you under the sun, all your fleeting days, for this is your portion in life and in your labor under the sun. Whatever you find to do with your hands, do it with all your might, for in Sheol, right, or Gehenna, or Hades, or Tartarus, where you are going, there is no work or planning or knowledge or wisdom. I saw something else under the sun. The race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, neither is the bread to the wise, nor the wealth to the intelligent, nor the favor to the skillful. Rather, time and chance happen to all. For surely no man knows his time, like fish caught in a cruel net, or birds trapped in a snare, so men are ensnared in an evil time that suddenly falls upon them. I have also seen this wisdom under the sun, and it was great to me. There was a small city with few men. A mighty king came against it, surrounded it, and built large siege ramps against it. Now a poor wise man was found in the city, and he saved the city by his wisdom. Yet no one remembered that poor man. And I said, wisdom is better than strength, but the wisdom of the poor man is despised, and his words are not heeded. The calm words of the wise are heeded over the shouts of a ruler among fools. Wisdom is better than weapons of war, but one sinner destroys much good. As dead flies bring a stench to the perfumer's oil, so a little folly outweighs wisdom and honor. A wise man's heart inclines to the right, but the heart of a fool to the left. Even as the fool walks along the road, his sense is lacking, and he shows everyone that he is a fool. If the ruler's temper flares against you, do not abandon your post, for calmness lays great offenses to rest. So let's take a look here what that says. If the spirit of the ruler rises against you, do not leave your post, for conciliation pacifies offenses. Huh. So actually, like reading this in the original Hebrew is quite interesting. So this is saying that the cure pacifies great offenses. So this word marpe, talking about like a remedy, right? Talks about like tranquility, composure. Huh. Interesting. Let's take a look here. There's stuff that you can learn every day, right? Yeah, the act of converting from a state of jealousy, suspicion, or hostility, the act of gaining favor or goodwill. Huh. And pacifies the great offenses. So it's pretty much saying don't add fuel to the fire, right? And again, as well, I think that this really does come down to like, if you keep cool, if you keep calm, and you do what you know is right, no matter how many things you got coming at you from different angles in the world of people being angry and trying to demean you, trying to manipulate you. If you know what you're doing is right and you just work diligently, work in silence, and be precise with what you're doing, you still have the upper hand no matter what. There is an evil I have seen under the sun, an error that proceeds from the ruler. Folly is appointed to great heights, but the rich sit in lowly positions. I have seen slaves on horseback, while princes go on foot like slaves. He who digs a pit may fall into it, and he who breaches a wall may be bitten by a snake. The one who quarries stones may be injured by them, and he who splits logs endangers himself. If the axe is dull and the blade unsharpened, more strength must be exerted, but skill will produce success. If the snake bites before it is charmed, there is no profit for the charmer. The words of a wise man's mouth are gracious, but the lips of a fool consume him. The beginning of his talk is folly, and the end of his speech is evil madness. Yet the fool multiplies words. No one knows what is coming, and who can tell him what will come after him? The toil of a fool wearies him, for he does not know the way to the city. Woe to you, O land, whose king is a youth, and whose princes feast in the morning. Blessed are you, O land, whose king is a son of nobles, and whose princes feast at the proper time, to be strong rather than to become drunk. Which, I mean, again, where are we at right now, right? As a whole across the world, who do we have that's ruling us? Do we have people that are noble and upright, and that know strength rather than become drunk, right? You can be drunk on power, drunk on uh, you know money, wealth. You know, a lot of that's going on today, and it even says here, uh, that it's a woe to that land. So we know that bad things only happen, right? When these kind of events are being perpetuated. Through laziness, the roof caves in, and in the hands of the idle, the house leaks. A feast is prepared for laughter, and wine makes life merry, but money is the answer for everything. Do not curse the king even in your thoughts, or curse the rich even in your bedroom, for a bird of the sky may carry your words, and a winged creature may report your speech. Cast your bread upon the waters, for after many days you will find it again. Divide your portion among 7, or even 8, for you do not know what disaster may befall the land. If the clouds are full, they will pour out rain upon the earth. Whether a tree falls to the south or the north, in the place where it falls, there it will lie. He who watches the wind will fail to sow, and he who observes the clouds will fail to reap. As you do not know the path of the wind, or how the bones are formed in a mother's womb, so you cannot understand the work of Yahuwah, the maker of all things. Sow your seed in the morning, and do not rest your hands in the evening, for you do not know which will succeed, whether this or that, or if both will equally prosper. Light is sweet, and it pleases the eyes to see the sun. So if a man lives many years, let him rejoice in them all, but let him remember the days of darkness, for they will be many. Everything to come is futile. Rejoice, O young man, while you are young, and let your heart be glad in the days of your youth. Walk in the ways of your heart and in the sight of your eyes, but know that for all these things Yahuwah will bring you to judgment. All right, right? Okay. So banish sorrow from your heart and cast off pain from your body, for youth and vigor are fleeting. Remember your Creator in the days of your youth, before the days of adversity come and the years approach of which you will say, I find no pleasure in them. Before the sunlight, moon, and stars are darkened, and the clouds return after the rain. On the day the keepers of the house tremble, and the strong men stoop, when those grinding cease because they are few, and those watching through windows see dimly, when the doors to the street are shut, and the sound of the mill fades away, when one rises at the sound of a bird, and all the daughters of song grow faint, when men fear the heights and dangers of the road, when the almond tree blossoms, the grasshopper loses its spring, and the caperberry shrivels, for then man goes to his eternal home, and mourners walk the streets. Remember him before the silver cord is snapped, and the golden bowl is crushed, before the pitcher is shattered at the spring, and the wheel is broken at the well, before the dust returns to the ground from which it came, and the spirit returns to Yahuwah who gave it. Futility of futiles, says the teacher. Everything is futile. Not only was the teacher wise, but he also taught the people knowledge. He pondered, searched out, and arranged many proverbs. The teacher searched to find delightful sayings and to record accurate words of truth. The words of the wise are like goads, and the anthologies of the masters are like firmly embedded nails driven by a single shepherd. But beyond these, my son, be warned, there is no end to the making of many books, and much study wearies the body. When all has been heard, the conclusion of the matter is this: fear Yahuwah and keep his commandments, because this is the whole duty of man. For Yahuwah will bring every deed into judgment, along with every hidden thing, whether good or evil. Boom. Right? So, what is that culmination? Right? So it's so very like depressing sounding, but then at the end of it, we kind of get a glimpse into what he's talking about. He's talking about the coming salvation of mankind, right? Speaking of the things that would be leading up to the destruction of the temple in 70 AD, with like the darkening of the windows, and when people were trying to see outside, the sun and the moon and the stars would be faded out. But yeah. So Martino Berto says, thanks for answering my questions in your last stream. Not sure if you saw my comment mentioning the perceived or real Mandela effect Bible changes. Have you noticed any changes? Does Amos 8:11 explain this famine of the word? Let's take a look and see. Amos is a very interesting book in the Bible. I've gone over Amos before as well. Not in depth, but... So it says, behold, the days are coming, declares Yahuwah God, when I will send a famine on the land, not a famine of bread or a thirst of water, but a famine of hearing and the words of the Lord. Hearing the words of the Lord. I know that there was like a theory that like CERN, right? Like the big CERN thing being like fired up. There's theories out there that it's like the Jesuit order, right? The Synagogue of Satan, trying to go in and be able to retroactively change things in the Bible. So every printed and digital, like every copy of whatever the words were, is changed. But I think that that's impossible to do personally. I think the word of Yahuwah is unchangeable, and it's persistent. Now, don't get me wrong, there are censorships that happen in the Bible, but we have ways to even perceive through that censorship and know what's really being said. So I wouldn't say that it's actually true censorship. It's just people trying to conceal the truth, but the truth always comes out. But no, I think that that this is talking about, because pretty much the timeline, right? So if we go back to the timeline that was seen here in for like the biblical timeline, Amos is, let's see where he falls. Yeah. So this is in 766 BC, and you see that we have everything that happens through Isaiah and Jeremiah, and so all in retrospect, Lamentations as well coming in. So what this is saying right here is the days are coming, right? Declares the Lord God, when I will send a famine on the land, not a famine of bread or a thirst of for water, but a famine of hearing the words of the Lord. Well, that's what happened, right? That's what the book of Isaiah is got a lot of uh, prophecies about the coming destruction, the first destruction of the first temple. But there's also that's what Jeremiah and Lamentations is about, because the book of Jeremiah is literally about Jeremiah warning everyone in Jerusalem what was going to happen, and then he warns them: don't go to Egypt, don't flee south, don't leave the city. You know, we have if it's going to go down, we have to stay in the city. And what did they do? A lot of people fled and headed south into Egypt, where there was a Babylonian army waiting for them. They were actually in Egypt at the time as well, and so they ran in there and got slaughtered. So they didn't heed the words of the prophets, and like Jeremiah literally was like telling them, this is going to happen, guys. We need to stop what we're doing, and nobody listened to him. Same and same with Ezekiel, right? Ezekiel, the whole. So I think that's what Amos is referring to that. So I don't think that that really there can be retroactive changes made to the Bible. Um, I think that there is definitely mistranslations. 100%. Even in Amos, there's mistranslations. They say they. I don't know if you saw my stream on that before, but uh, there's a yeah, an almost 5-8 talking about the Pleiades and Orion, right? So this word Kima doesn't mean the Pleiades. If you watch my "What Is Space" video that I did a couple weeks ago, it's actually this word means the seven wandering, which are referenced in um, the book of Enoch, First Enoch, as being the seven stars that transgressed the path that Yahuwah had laid out. So those are what they would call the planets, right? And then Orion, this word actually means like more like heavenly bodies. Um, they're like constellation. The word constellation really is a tough word to try and reconcile in the Bible, because when it says that God gave the stars for signs and for seasons, it wasn't really necessarily talking about constellations. Constellations in astrology is really a fallen watcher doctrine. It's not real doctrine. Um, but I do think that heavenly bodies, for those signs, and what those signs are or were, is for us to denote when the seasons are. Pretty much, that's what it means for signs and for seasons, like signs of knowing where we are in time, and so that we know what seasons we're in. But yeah, so as far as that, the Ecclesiastes, I think there's a lot to really kind of learn from that, a lot to garner. Um, and it's very depressing through the whole thing, but then at the very end it gives that kind of glimpse of truth of like, well, here's the reality of the situation. But again, if we can stay diligent, right, on what we're doing, and if we can sit there and know who we are dealing with when it comes to these powers that shouldn't be, that like to run everything. We have. I think that there's a lot of. Uh, I guess I want to say hope that can be garnered from it, and knowing that like if we live a righteous path and do the right thing, and do all the things that we're meant to do, we'll be good. So Martino said, some say the word planets didn't used to be in King James Version in 2 Kings 23:5. Oh, maybe. That word planets isn't really in the Bible. But let's see, Second Kings 23:5. Josiah also did away with the idolatrous priests ordained by the kings of Judea to burn incense in the high places in the cities of Judea and in the places around Jerusalem. Those who had burned incense to Baal, to the sun and moon, and the constellations, to all the hosts of heaven. Now, so in this kind of like context, right? Yes, this constellations is probably referencing constellations. And I think that actually this is also talked about in Second Chronicles too. They talk about Josiah and what he did, and then his son comes and fucking ruins everything. But see, so it's funny, man. We talk about he removed the priests and you know they were burning incenses on the high places of the cities and the places all around Jerusalem. They'd burn incenses to Baal, to the sun, and the moon, and to the constellations. And this, when it's referencing the constellations, that I can believe that it's talking about constellations, because that's talking about zodiac signs, because that is the fallen watcher doctrine that was given. Um, So, and when it talks about the hosts of heaven, that's what I believe they're talking about, like heavenly bodies. So there's like almost like a distinct uh, difference between like constellations and heavenly bodies, right? Um, so yeah, I mean, like the word planet doesn't ever come up in the Bible, but guess what we do see in the book of Jude, right? It does talk about. It says, see the whole thing. Why not? Um, it actually has the word planetai. So let's see. Haven't saved others, maybe destroyed. Having kept their domain but having their own dwelling. Judgment and great. Sorry, the word, I think it's right here. I actually went over this as well in that video that I did about space. Had a whole little thing actually that I went over with this, but yeah, speaking of the planets, right? Like planetai. It's actually a Greek word. Let's see. Oh man, I'm just gonna go here. Whoops. It's gonna be easier to just do it like this, and then view the whole chapter and find. This one right here. So the word wandering is the word planetai in Greek. So again, it's kind of funny because this is explicitly stating about the wandering stars that are the seven wandering stars, that are the planets, right? So guys, they give you the answer. Like it's a riddle that they call them the planets. They call them the planets because planetai, meaning the wandering. So they give you the truth right there, which is kind of funny. Um, so Martino Berto says other words like duke, castle, damsel, couch, furniture, pi- pilots, etc. Well, I mean, yeah, that's why I don't. Again, I don't like the King James version of the Bible. It's fucking terrible. But I do not like couch is a word that they will use. Um, but again, realistically, um, this word couch, it does mean like a sitting place. Like I think that the word couch is a real was a real word back then. Like because they talk about like lounging, you know, and they had like lounging areas, and I'm sure that the word like mitois or mita, it is a reference to like a couch or a bed. I don't really think that that's that weird. I mean, I'm sure they had maybe not couches how we think of them today, but that's probably the closest term that you could have for what it was. So, but yeah, so that's all. That's all I really got for the stream today. I just wanted to do a little read through of Ecclesiastes. Especially on this day that we have that we have to remember all the people that were sacrificed for some greater agenda that's just meant to try and bring more dominion upon mankind, right? And as we saw there, reading through Ecclesiastes, we know that that's just what it is and how these guys are always going to be. All right, Martino Berto says Genesis 31:34, and Rachel had taken the teraphim and put them in the furniture of the camel and sit upon them, and Laban feeleth at the tent and hath not found in the YLT version. Doesn't make sense. Well, okay. Let's go ahead and take a look and see. So 31, 34. So Genesis 31, 34. Now Rachel had taken Laban's household idols, put them in the saddlebag of her camel, and was sitting on them. And Laban searched everything in the tent, but found nothing. So what's your question? You don't think they had saddlebags back then? Like, of course they did. That's literally what the like. That's how they weren't stupid. They knew that they could put saddlebags on horses and camels, so they would sling them up on the sides. And by like sitting on them, it's because if you know how a saddlebag works, it literally it's just a saddle, right, and with a strap that would go over where you would sit and would hoist around and probably I think maybe under the camel as well. I don't know. Maybe back then it just was a strap that would go over it and be fastened into the sides of a saddle. But yeah, it's not like they were like running around on camels with no saddles or anything. I mean that's the thing that the knowledge of these things have always been with these people. They weren't stupid, you know. But yeah, and then Laban searched everything in the tent but found nothing. So I don't know. Was he looking? Maybe was looking for the idols. So which you know probably is good that she took them because there shouldn't be any idols. But it says furniture of the camel is a bad translation. Well, yeah, that's why. That's why all I can say is like the only versions of the Bible that I read is Strong's, the interlinear, and the actual exact translation. So like in Hebrew, right? So like I mean really it says this word bikar, right? It literally means like a basket saddle. So I mean, just use the original word. You know, if you're reading something, you're like, hey, this doesn't make sense, then just look up what the original word in Hebrew or Koine Greek was, and you can get an idea of like, oh, okay. And again, I'm not saying that like these translations that happen aren't explicitly misleading, because I mean they probably are, you know, but I don't. It doesn't mean anything to me because I know that I've got Strong's, I've got the interlinear, and I've got the original, Hebrew text and Koine Greek text to rely on, and that's why using those and using some context clues, we can really find out what they're trying to say. So even if the translation is wrong, whether it be on purpose or not, the actual word of Yahuwah is still there, and it's unstoppably prevalent, and the truth is always going to be able to be out there. And what I mean by there is a well, in Jubilees, right, the Book of Jubilees, it actually has a it proves that there is active censorship that goes on in even in Genesis, right? So Genesis giving wrong name of a descend of Jesus. I think that we could see it in here. Yeah, it's somebody. What is it? I'd have to re-look it up because I'd found it one time where because it lists like in Luke and in Matthew, it lists the generations to Jesus, right? And it's in so there's Luke, and then there's Matthew, and realistically, there people will say that those are two different generations because they list some of the people are listed as different, but it's not actually wrong because it's giving two different like accounts of the more like um, royal, I guess you could say, right? Bloodline that leads to Yahusha, and then the other is the more common bloodline that leads to Yahusha. But I think it's in the one that's in Luke where it talks about like it gives a name that isn't in Genesis, but if you look it up in the Book of Jubilees, it's actually in the Book of Jubilees as the right name. So even though like if we were to look at it and be like, oh well, the Bible's wrong, no, it was just you know on purpose. It was changed, but the truth is still there. And that's what I think is that's why I say I don't think the truth can ever really be fully concealed for from us. If we can do our own research, right? I mean, one of the best. That 1 Thessalonians 5:21, right? It says, "But test all things, hold fast to what is true." I think that that's one of the I think it's one of the better verses of the Bible. Oh shit. Okay, Bertino. Yeah. Hey, drop a link to the stream because I'm done with this stream. I was just reading through Ecclesiastes just because I felt the need to do that today. But drop the link in the chat, and Yeah, I'll go on there. Hell yeah. Let's go. I love dropping knowledge, man. Yeah, Martina Berta says, when you're done with this stream, can you call in to another stream talking about the perceived Bible changes? Many others could use your insights, and the host has been asking for guests to call in. It's going on now. It's got 81 people watching. So yeah, I'd love to call in and also talk about preterism because uh, it's kind of funny. Well, what's the name of the stream? Just give me the name of the stream, and I'll just look it up. I'm just gonna keep the chat going for a second so he can put in whatever the name of the channel is, and then I'll head over there and we'll have some fun. All right, EYA Supernatural Bible Changes. Okay, yeah, man, I'll see you over there. All right, guys, well, that's it for this stream. I guess we could hop over to EYA Supernatural Bible Changes if you guys want to see me talk to these people and see what's going on. All right, later.